Daniel Jones suffered a neck injury yesterday, which harkened us all back to the last couple of years, early 2021, when he had the mysterious neck injury. And behind that offensive line, his life is in danger.
Yes.
His career is in danger.
No doubt.
So if you're just tuning in, Brian Dable recently said, I think Daniel's going to be fine. Should be good to go Sunday night against Buffalo. After the ass whipping that Daniel Jones took on Sunday, and the fact that there's any kind of neck injury, could you actually put him behind this porous offensive line again? Or do you say, you need a break, pal?
I would not want to. Now, Brian Dable laid into the Giants' offensive line after the game, and he should have, because they were horrendously bad. It was both execution, both wanting to know or knowing what to do in certain situations. Evan Neal, again, has a memeable moment where he's just kind of standing in no man's land. While
memeable moment.
That's what it was.
Yes, it was.
And I don't mean that in a good way, where he's standing in no man's land. On the hit that knocked Daniel Jones out of the game, Azuda just got stuck. Like, he couldn't kick back. It just was like you're watching it, and he starts to trip and fall down. And meanwhile, Daniel Jones is getting destroyed. But the neck injury, I hope, is not serious. Because if it is, then you kind of have your answer on Daniel Jones. If he can't stay healthy because of the hits that he's taking, then this $40 million a year contract feels like it's to waste. It's gone. And Daniel Jones is durable. He's tough. He's strong. You love the kid because of how he wants to be a winner. But he's getting obliterated. And I don't know if I'd want him back there.
He is facing an amount of pressure right now that is, I'll use the word again because we can use it a couple of times about the Giants, historical. Mm-hmm. Bad kind of historical.
Yes.
He is facing a blitzkrieg of
sacks, I think, already. 30 or maybe 30-plus sacks already. That's not even counting the number of hits that Daniel Jones has taken, both as a runner, scrambling, whatever it may be.
And by the way, last year I think he took 44 sacks. So 44. He's approaching that number.
Yes, and we're 5 games in. And so he's on pace to be sacked 100 times, which blows past the record.
Yeah, the record's 99. They're on pace to break the record.
It's unbelievable to think that Daniel Jones, who's a year removed from being one of the most steady quarterbacks in the NFL, wasn't elite, but he was steady, is now under pressure so often that you almost don't want him back there because he's for his health, for his safety. And the Giants have to do something different. They have to, because he's not going to make it through the season.
I feel bad for him, but I kind of look at it and say, you know what? If I'm not putting him back there, now I'm putting Tyrod Taylor back there. I'm putting him in the same danger Daniel Jones is in. And what am I waiting for? Am I just going to sit there and wait until Andrew Thomas walks through that door and he's going to save the Giants' offensive line?
Yeah.
What the hell are we waiting for at that point then?
This is the balance, because you've committed resources to him, to Daniel Jones, to be your starting quarterback. Hopefully he's your franchise guy. This was supposed to be one of those years where he helped prove that he was worth it. That's not going to happen until this offensive line turns around or Andrew Thomas gets healthy and guys start playing at a higher level. You're not going to find anything out about Daniel Jones. And the only thing that's potentially going to happen is he's going to get seriously hurt, because he'll stand in there. Right, he's not running and screaming and running away from the contact that's coming his way. He'll stand in there and do what he's supposed to do and just take hit after hit after hit until ultimately it breaks him. And I commend him for that, but it's not fair to him. Right, my biggest takeaway from this game, and really from the early part of this season for the New York Giants, is that this narrative around Daniel Jones is simply not fair, because it's malpractice what they're doing with him in the offensive line. It is so bad. I'd be scared to be back there.
Well, what can Brian Daboll do? Because last year he schemed his way out of kind of protecting Daniel with what was not a great offensive line last year also. Now, they did have Andrew Thomas out there just about every single week, but they were able to protect him. What the hell are they supposed to do? After Joshua Izudu almost got Daniel killed, he got pulled from the game.
Yes, he did.
So Daboll tried something, but ultimately, look at these answers on the offensive line. Are there any?
No, look. So I went back and watched this game just to see the misses. Who busted? Why was Daniel under so much pressure?
Was the answer everybody?
It was everybody. It was that. I talked about the memorable moment from Evan Neal at McKeithen at right guard. He just would get beat, run around. Bredesen would look up, look back to get the snap, look up again, snap the ball, get beat immediately, right? And ultimately, we've already talked about Azuda at left tackle. They just, again, Glowinski, we already know, has not been good all season. There's no answer. The only thing that they can do is change what they want to do. They want to be explosive, quick game, throw it to the tight end, throw it to your wide receivers, get the ball out of Daniel Jones' hands quickly. The only thing they can do is start playing 12 personnel. Put 2 tight ends there so there's an influence on the edge, and you help every single play. But that's a boring offense. They're not going to score. But guess what, Evan? They're not scoring anyways.
No. And look, here's part of the problem, and I'm an expert on this. I'm an expert on very few things, but I'm an expert on being embarrassed.
Yeah.
And what's happened so far this season with the New York Giants is not just a team that took a step back. They're not just a team that's 1-4 through 5 games. That happens. It could happen. Mm-hmm. It happens a lot in the NFL. I remember even saying to you before the year, I think that's going to happen. But here's what I didn't think would happen. Here's the part that is stunning. Here's the part that you cannot live with if you're a New York Giant fan. Every single week they go out there, they're not losing, they're getting embarrassed. The Giants are the joke of the league. They have been outscored, I think it was right until that pick six, 91-12 in the first halves of games to start the year. They are bad, they're pathetic, and around the league, not just here in New York, they're being laughed at. And it's one thing to watch a crappy football team. We're all kind of used to that. Yeah. We've done that for a while. But then you go it up a notch. Then there's that other notch of everybody's laughing at you. Yeah. And 2 years ago, the Giants had that with Joe Judge when he ran that quarterback sneak at his own 5. Tell me if I'm crazy. I think we're at the point now, and I'm stunned we're here, where the Giants are the joke of the NFL.
I don't think we've gotten to that point yet. And that's only because the play calling hasn't deteriorated to the point where it's embarrassing.
Correct. They have not had that judging moment.
Yes.
But they have had the outscore in the first half moment.
Of course. Yeah, but that's just ineptitude offensively. That just is what it is. The Jets and the Giants had that I don't know, that inglorious statistic that they had not run an offensive play with the lead. Now, the Jets finally did it.
They did. Yes.
They finally did it.
Yes.
All right, thanks to a Breece Hall touchdown run. And then, obviously the Broncos didn't come back, and they ran an offensive play with the lead. The Giants still haven't done it. We're 5 weeks into the NFL season. They have yet to run an offensive play in a league, and they've had the lead in a game for 10 seconds, right?
Yeah.
The last second field goal. Like less than that, probably. So
that's what I mean by being a joke. It's not necessarily like there's a play call that makes them a joke. It's the results. I mean, 1-4 could have happened. Like, there were plenty of people out there that said, you know what? It's a tough schedule. I can see a step back.
Which is what I thought was going to happen.
Sure, it's what
but I thought they would also win some of these games.
Yeah, I thought they'd take a step back. I didn't think this. They are playing, and I remember saying this to you last week, they are playing like the worst team in the NFL outside of 2 good quarters in which they exploded against the Arizona Cardinals. Outside of that, and it's collective. It's everywhere. They're bad all over the place.
Well, I mean, to be fair to the Giants, the first couple of drives, they weren't horrible, right? It wasn't like it was inept. It wasn't like they weren't converting on first downs. It wasn't like Breida didn't have a good run or Eric Gray had a couple of good runs and Daniel Jones threw a couple of good passes. Like, there's some positives that you take away from
while they were doing that, they let the Dolphins march down the field on their opening drive with ease.
But I'm just talking about Daniel Jones in this offense. The issues with the defense, we will get to. And Jonathan Vilma, please know what the hell you're talking about when you're covering defenses. But ultimately, offensively is where you have to focus on this Giant team because they can't score. Right? They've been outscored whatever the number is. You just gave it. They had scored 6 points yesterday.
Right.
6.
And think about it, some of those field goals came with no side of the field. One of the interceptions, the Okereke pick, set the Giants up at the Dolphins 23, and then they got stopped. They actually went backwards. And then Graham Gano kicked the field goal. So if we want to credit the Giant offense for scoring those points,
it's hard to.
I guess you can, but really, did they score it?
Yeah, you give them credit for one of them, but the other ones you just can't. Right, the first field goal was 13-play drive. You give them credit for it. They got into the red zone and they kicked the field goal. The second one, that was handed to them. It was gifted, and that was it. That was it. And so as we like try to evaluate what's going on with this team and what they need to do going forward, it's one, figure out how to protect your quarterback. It is not fair what Daniel Jones has to go through each and every week. and we always talk about quarterbacks getting lost and they get ruined, and it's because they stop looking at what they're supposed to do, and they're like, how do I escape? Right? How do I avoid getting hit? Daniel hasn't done that yet. It's coming, because when you have a neck injury, because you get blindsided, I mean, Zuda barely even touched the DN, barely touched him, and he gets drilled. He launched into him and ripped his neck. It was, I mean, that's dangerous for a quarterback.
No doubt.
It's not fair for Daniel Jones. So what do we do? Like, what do? You got to change what you do. Brian Dable, Mike Kafka. You can't try to be this ideal, drawn up on paper, X's and O's offense. You got to protect your quarterback first and foremost.
And right now they haven't at a historical level. More on the Giants and your calls coming up on them, 877-337-6666. As far as the Jets are concerned, I'm not going to pretend like what I saw yesterday was pretty. It wasn't. Not going to pretend that it gave me visions of a Super Bowl or even a playoff appearance. It did not. But it was such a necessary win, and they did it with the formula. The formula that I look at, Tiki, that gave me a little bit of hope and a little bit of confidence after the Buffalo game when Aaron Rodgers went down. And that's the formula of a defense that can force turnovers, which they eventually did after getting off to yet another dreadful start. More on that later. A quarterback that doesn't F up too much, and there were a couple of F-ups, but it wasn't too much. But more than that, a running game led by a home run hitter in Breece Hall that can change a football game the way Odell used to do it in 2016 when the Giant offense was literally throw a slant to Odell, and every once in a while he's going to take it to the house. And that's Breece Hall. And the New York Jets yesterday against a lousy Bronco team, no question, against a coach that doesn't remind you of a Super Bowl winning head coach these days in Sean Payton, the New York Jets successfully used the formula. Dominant effort by the defense in the second half. They forced a couple of huge turnovers, including, to me, the biggest one after Xavier Gibson muffed a punt, and then immediately they make a play. Really, because Sean Payton's calling like the most dreadful play call in the world. And then the home runs by Breece Hall. We'll get to Zach at some point, but the quarterback was made to be irrelevant, and the Jets won a football game. And that's how they won games early last year, and that's how they're going to have to win games this year if they're going to give us a little bit of a ride through the winter.
The only thing I would push back on.
Go.
Because I called this game, obviously.
I heard that.
With Matt and Andrew Catalan, AJ Ross on the sideline. Just a plug.
Nice. At least you plugged them and not our radio show.
It was too weird of a game. Because this was truly one of the ugliest, entertaining games I've ever been a part of.
That's well said. More on that later. Go ahead.
We'll get to it.
Go ahead.
The only thing I would push back on is that Zach can't be irrelevant. He can't be. He has to continue to grow. Now, here's what here is my overall evaluation of this game. The Jets won an ugly game while Zach Wilson continued to take some steps forward. He made some throws, made two really big mistakes. One was right before halftime. That's got to be out of bounds or in the end zone. And then obviously the interception, which was a good idea. It was bad execution. The back shoulder throw that Pat Surtain just made an awesome play on. A lot of people were giving Garrett Wilson a lot of grief on that one. That ball should have been on his back shoulder.
By the way, I just want to answer that. I'll tell you why my first reaction was to even give Garrett Wilson grief. I don't anymore, but that initial pop for the first 30 seconds is because Garrett Wilson has set this high bar for us.
Oh, of course.
We've watched him make incredible plays. So even when the quarterback, in this case Zach, doesn't make a good throw, which he's done before, there's this feeling of, well, Garrett's going to make a play.
Yeah.
And so when he doesn't and it turns into an interception like that, we are unfairly criticizing the receiver.
Two things. That's a really hard catch because you're going through the defender. And most importantly, Pat Surtain made an unbelievable interception.
He did.
That ball should hit the ground. Instead, Surtain gets it between his legs and holds on to it, and it's an interception. Ultimately, it's no harm, no foul because Quincy Williams was a stud. And Bryce Hall ends up picking up the fumble and returning it for a touchdown. But you can't make Zach irrelevant. But the beauty of this win for the Jets is that they can win without Zach being elite, right? He was kind of elite against the Kansas City Chiefs. And
for four drives, yes, he was.
But that's what, just rating-wise, just overall, your takeaway was, man, that felt good. And in fact, when we talked to the Jets, it felt like they didn't lose the game, right? And so they were elated because Zach had made progress, and you need to keep seeing that. But when he has these step-back games and you win anyways, I think that's a positive.
Well, because you win games, and this is the challenge for this defense. First of all, to actually come out and not get off to an awful start, which they did, unfortunately, in this game. Their performance in the first half was dreadful. But the defense has two challenges. A, get off to a good start and play in the first half like you do in the second half, because they were electric in the second half of this game, and give a lot of credit to Jeff Ulbrich, who made the right adjustments.
No doubt.
And the number two, and this is what killed him last year, and this is why they beat Denver and why they beat Buffalo. It's why they have 2 wins. Force turnovers. And they did. And they were big, and they were important, and they were key. And to me, that's the formula for this Jet team to be good. I didn't say great. I didn't say make the playoffs. I didn't say win a Super Bowl. Just be good. Just be good. Just give us relevant games throughout November and December. This defense may not have to be the 85 Bears, but they got to come out, force turnovers, and play the way we saw them play in the second half, because that's why they won.
Yeah.
It's why I had any hope after the Aaron Rodgers injury. It had nothing to do with the quarterback. It had to do with a big-time defense and a running game that can be special. And now that the handcuffs are off Breece Hall and there's no more pitch count, Breece Hall reminded America yesterday what this kid is capable of doing.
Yeah, 22 carries, 177 yards. I wanted him to get 200.
Me too.
200 is special. He just didn't have enough opportunities as the game got.
They kept running the ball, and I was screaming at the TV, more. Feed him more.
Yeah.
Feed him more.
Yeah.
Feed him more. Now, eventually, you ask Zach to make a play, and I'll give Zach some credit. He made a couple of plays, specifically the big one. It was right before the interception, was the 38-yard reception of Tyler Conklin. That was a big play.
It was.
It was 3rd and 4. Broncos are going to get the ball back with a lot of time left. Zach made a play.
Yeah.
He didn't have to make a lot of plays, but he has to make a play here and there and be Sanchez-like, and then all of a sudden you have hope as a Jet fan.
Yeah, we were talking about it on the broadcast, saying this is one of the biggest third downs that this kid has faced. And they went empty. It was empty.
Yep.
And which makes it a full field read. So he started left. So he's reading left. It's not there immediately. So he gets back right. He sees the nod on the linebacker by Zama, and runs this unbelievable route. Conklin runs this great route. He throws it with confidence. Humongous first down. Obviously, it ended with the interception, and the defense had to do their part. But Zach did some good things in this game. So when you say he's not important, he is important. He has to be, right? The only way that this team gets anywhere close to being back on track is if Zach keeps growing.
Here's what I mean
this was
by
a
that.
different type of growth game for him.
Yeah.
You know
Very
what I mean?
different. Yeah.
So last week against Kansas City, it was like, man, this kid can make some plays. He can make some throws. This is the kind of, man, we're not playing well. I've made some bad things, but I'm still fighting, right? I'm not letting it pull me down. And I think that's important for him as a young quarterback.
Here's what I mean by that with Zach Wilson. If I gave you a list and asked you rank why the Jets won, just give me a list. Very quick. Why the Jets won. Zach Wilson's down the list.
Yeah,
He's just down the list. And that doesn't mean he was bad. Doesn't mean he was horrible. It just means when you think about what the hell happened on a late Sunday afternoon in Denver, there are many other things that come to mind before you get to the quarterback. And last year, when they were winning games in the first half of the year with Zach Wilson, that's how they did it. He was sort of, and maybe irrelevance too strong. Maybe that's the word that throws you off. Less important than a lot of other things.
Well, he doesn't have to be the catalyst.
Exactly.
Breece Hall is the catalyst.
Yes.
Right? When you can scheme, and give Hack a ton of credit, he schemed some things that were just awesome. Now, the Denver Broncos have one of the worst, I think the worst rush defense in the NFL. They're giving up 176 yards on the ground. Breece had 177. So you know where that came from. So I'm not saying it was easy, but he created space for Breece Hall, and he took advantage of it. It corrected the errors when you have a guy that can hit home runs.
Yes.
Right? That's what makes this Jets team interesting, because they're not going to be perfect offensively. Defensively, they're sound. Right? They play zone. They make you make throws. They make you beat them. But they play sound defensively. And offensively, if they can hit a home run here and there, both with Breece Hall or Garrett Wilson, this team can I'm not saying they're going to be world beaters, but they can win some games. And that's all you can ask for now.
Man, yesterday
after the Aaron Rodgers, letdown that happened in the first game of the season, they're actually starting to climb back up a little bit, and you can feel it. It's not perfect. It's not pretty. But you can start to feel that they're climbing a little bit.
Here's how special yesterday was. I have been married for, 2015, 2023, 8 years. Okay, I've been married for 8 freaking years. And yesterday at about 7:15, I walk upstairs. Probably later than that, 7:45. I walk upstairs. My wife's in bed. And she says, so? And I said, they won. And she said, I don't remember the last time you told me that. Because remember, the Monday night game, very different animal.
Yeah.
Game ends at man, very different. This is so rare for us. Like, we don't win a lot. That's why Sean Morash pissed me off today. Comes right in, first thing he said, he looks into my eyes and says, you're not making the playoffs. And I'm like, is this effing guy serious? I'm happy they won a game. I'm thrilled that I had what they call a victory Monday. You're not very familiar with that these days, I understand. So I'm not getting the Super Bowl tickets ready. The playoffs, sure, we'll talk about it because that's the dream, that's the hope. But why do you have to come in here on a beautiful fall Monday? I'm wearing a beautiful sweatshirt that says Polo Grounds on it, which is very comfortable because I love hoodie sweatshirts. And why do you have to look at me and immediately try to rain on a little mini parade of, hey, we won a football game? I'm a baby. Why?
Perhaps it was that I drove today on Columbus Day instead of taking the train, and I sat here listening to the station for 8 hours of the Jets can make the playoffs, and I wanted to drive into a guardrail after watching that.
So your anger at other people is
I took it out
now
on you.
at me?
I apologize.
Indigenous Peoples Day, by the way.
Yes. Yes. Either way, I saw you and your little smiling face, and I sat there and watched that stupid pick Zach Wilson threw, and I realized if that's any other team but the Denver Broncos, it's another Jet loss, and I said, I hate this little redheaded prick with all my being right now.
Wow.
And I've just listened to BT barge into my head with Jet playoff talk, and I should not have taken it out of you.
Come on, don't get premature.
By the way, I love listening to Brandon and Sal, weekdays 10 to 2.
Let me just enjoy a win. A win. We'll talk to Joe B coming up right up at 4 o'clock. We'll come back with your calls on the Jets and Giants, 877-337-6666. And I'm very excited for this. And I don't know the answer, but we're going to get an answer. There was a controversy yesterday afternoon. It turned into Xavier McKinney versus Jonathan Vilma. Okay, as you recall, there was a significant play in the Giants-Dolphin game. It actually happened right out of the second half when Tyreek Hill went 69 yards for a touchdown. Nice. And Jonathan Vilma basically blamed it on Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney, after the game, says Jonathan Vilma doesn't know what the bleep he's talking about. Well, Coach Tiki is here to tell us who was right. So I can't wait. Is Vilma an idiot? Is McKinney right? Is McKinney wrong? Is McKinney a baby? We'll get that answer and, of course, talk to you on what is, it depends what team you root for. It's either a very happy Monday or a very depressed Monday.